Recently, I posted on my social media challenges asking what people would like to hear me speak about related to my healing process, specifically on ADD and ADHD. And I'll answer some of those questions in this video, and the ones I don't get to will be in follow-up videos. So I have a feeling this is going to be a series. So ADD stands for attention deficit disorder, and ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think most people know that, but I've also heard people describe ADHD as an acronym for attention dialed to a higher dimension. And I'm going to discuss that as well because that is relevant. Um, and I also posted on my Facebook, and I basically said if your attention span cannot allow you to listen to my content and the details of what I'm going to share, then I'll summarize the root cause of my struggles with ADD in one sentence. And it was fear, fear of the truth. That's the root cause. And um, if anything, just to plant a quick seed for people. If that makes no sense to you, or if you can't relate to that, I totally understand. And I think some of the things I will share will help give you insight at least. Now, with everything I share, it's through my own experience. And so my advice is to just take what I share that lands as real or interesting for you, whatever lands that way, go with that and just ignore the rest. And because we're all so unique, and that's part of the discussion and is very relevant to this ADD phenomena is our uniqueness. So the first question I'm going to answer is someone asked, what does it feel like to have ADD? So, and that's going to be different for each of us, right? Um, so I'm just going back in my memory and recalling the things that I had difficulty with. And of course, the attention span, we all know about that. Um, for me, it was being extremely scattered mentally, the inability to stay linear. I would oscillate between being zoned out. People called me a space cadet because I would be just like in a different world. I would oscillate between that, like being daydreamy and sometimes even being sleepy and having trouble staying alert. Oscillate between that and being very hyper and unable to sit still. In fact, sometimes feeling I was going to jump out of my own skin. Also, overwhelm. Not sometimes, but virtually all the time. There was so much going on and I was overwhelmed. Confusion, disorientation, feeling lost. It was like I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on around me, inside of me, that kind of thing. And of course, like memory issues that are often people experience with this. And because my attention span was so short and my memory was so bad, people perceived me as lacking intelligence or not caring or being antisocial. Um, the world really seemed very foggy to me. It was like I couldn't really, it was just unclear. And also, when people would speak to me, it seemed like they were speaking to me from underwater. That's what I remember. It's like I can't really make out what you're saying. So these things were quite severe for me to the point to where, as I got older, I had to take medication just to keep a job, manage finances, and like do things like laundry, like basic life things. So, and I stayed on medication for about 15 years. I no longer take any kind of psychiatric medication, and I no longer struggle with the severity that I used to struggle with. I was told that that would be impossible when I was really looking for answers. Because those 15 years while I was on the medications, I was still seeking to understand what was really going on. And I had hoped that I would be able to function without medication. But often so called experts told me that that's impossible because it's a permanent condition. Like it's part of, they said it's part of your biology. The best you can do is eat a healthy diet, exercise, and take your pill. That is a lie. Through my own experience, I know that that's not true. Let's see. The other question I would like to answer is, oh, did you feel different than other kids? Absolutely. I felt very different. In fact, sometimes I felt like I was an alien that dropped into this place. And it seemed to me that people had an instruction manual for what to do, and I was missing that instruction manual. That was how it was for me. Now I know that basically every child feels different. Um, and what happens is, and they are different, that's the thing. And so we come into this world and we look around and it's like, I don't really understand this. It doesn't match it doesn't make sense. Why is everybody doing this? Why am I being asked to do these things? Maybe, maybe there's something wrong with me. So that's what happens is that, oh, I'm different and I can't fit in very well to what this world is about. So I must be the problem. I must lack intelligence. I must lack something inside myself. And that is a huge part of the problem, is that conclusion that it must be me. And most children conclude that to an extent. When did you first notice signs of your ADHD? Well, I could say it was when I attempted to go to college and I was overwhelmed with all the responsibilities of keeping up with schoolwork and like managing money and things like that. And that's when I got myself diagnosed and I chose to get on medication. Now, that that was early on when these things first came out. That thing about ADD didn't even exist for me growing up. But I could say that's when I really noticed it. Or I could say it was when I was younger and I was getting reprimanded. Growing up, I was getting reprimanded all the time. For not following instructions, for not doing what I was expected to do, for all kinds of things. Or it could have been during the experiences of trauma I've had, because I've had sexual trauma when I was young. I could say the problem started then, but actually, that's not true. The problem actually began the moment that I was born, because I went from a state of being in complete unity and harmony and acceptance and being totally taken care of into a world that's very, very different than that. A world of separation, a world of judgment, where people are not in their hearts, they're not sensitive, and they're not always caring. And so that was when the problem began. And then I wanted to seek my way back to an experience of home, of unity, because I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I wasn't home. I didn't feel at home. And this is the case with maybe virtually all of us. And so that need to seek home, to seek unity, it was like, what is life here about? Why am I here? What's going on? Like this kind of thing. That kind of seeking to me is wonderful. Like, what better thing could we do in our life but to seek those deep existential, um, like understanding and wisdom, and um, also to seek that experience of being in unity. The problem actually was that I was seeking those things in the wrong place, in the outside world. Um, and that's what created most of my suffering, is I was looking for those things in a place where it didn't exist. In fact, it was the opposite. So fitting in with the world created most of my problems. Um, Not realizing that the outside world doesn't have the answer. And I actually already knew a lot. Children are so much more intelligent than they realize. And most of them start doubting their own reality unless they have someone help them who understands these things. And someone asked me, like, how would you wish the adults would have been towards you or done different things to be more helpful? And I think that person asked that because you're probably trying to support a loved one or maybe even a child. And I would say, um, no one in my life could have really helped me because they had their own problems. They had their own stuff going on. So from their state, I don't think they could have done anything differently. I had grandmothers that were kind to me and a teacher that was kind. So that compassion and kind-heartedness was like really helpful for me. But yeah, so unless uh, someone does their own inner work and discovers and helps and heals themselves, it's very difficult to help another person, because if you don't understand yourself and the causes of your suffering, if you're not in touch with your intuition, if you don't trust yourself, your instincts, you can't help someone else because you're probably going to get them involved in your own fear, in your own conditionings. And that's a huge trap that people fall into. That person has a problem and I want to help them. And of course, it's not, it's like you care about them, especially if they're your child. You don't want to see them suffer. But yeah, it's a huge trap that I see a lot of people fall into. It's like, oh, I want to help that person that has a problem. But me, I'm fine. Everything's fine. um, uh, yeah. So when we're doing that inner work and discovering things and discovering who we are and learning through our life's challenges, then we're in a much better position to support someone else who has their own challenges and their own soul's journey. And that's a big part of it, to respect that each person has their own soul's journey and they might not live like how we think they should live. Just like we often need to realize we're not here to live the way other people expect us to live. So, yeah, seeking that home in the outside world um, caused a lot of issues, because then I ended up taking on a lot of that stuff. So when you think about the experience of being overwhelmed or scattered, and you're just taking things on, the beliefs, the fears, the emotions, all these things from the outside world, then of course you're not going to feel well. And many kids do that. Um, Children do that because they don't know that other people's problems and emotions are not their fault. And so if you've ever had the insight that ADD and ADHD and being an empath, that there is a relationship, then you're right on. And because there's a huge connection in that. Um, so I think that's all I'm going to say in this video, and I'll follow it up with another one. But yeah, and if you have any feedback, I welcome that. Thanks for listening.